Have you found yourself in past relationships where at some point you genuinely wondered, is it me?
Like, not in a healthy, self-reflective way.
No, not at all. More like in a spiraling at 2 a.m., replaying every conversation. And maybe I'm actually the toxic one kind of way.
The I'm too sensitive, misremembering, asking for too much sort of spiral.
That one. Yeah. The how do I keep ending up here spiral.
Mm.
Post diagnosis, you look back and think, oh,
If so, then this episode is for you. This is Angry on the Inside. I'm Jess.
and I'm Jeannine. We're both certified ADHD life coaches, but this isn't coaching.
Not therapy or medical advice.
It's just real, honest conversations about being women with late diagnosed ADHD and everything that goes along with it.
Take what resonates and leave the rest.
Today, we're talking about why so many late diagnosed women have a history of relationships that were not healthy.
For so many of us, there's this moment after you're diagnosed where your entire relationship history starts rearranging itself in your brain.
Like someone turned on the lights in a room you've been walking through in the dark for like 20 years.
Once you can see, you realize you weren't crazy.
Actually, you were dysregulated, masking. You were chasing dopamine and terrified of rejection. You didn't trust your own memory.
Which is so different from being crazy.
But it's kind of infuriating too.
Hence the name of our podcast, Angry on the Inside.
Oh, I see the connection now.
We're talking about something we hear constantly from late diagnosed women, which is why do so many of us have a history of relationships that were so wrong for us?
I was thinking like an unmitigated disaster. Why did we all date the same emotionally unavailable man who made us feel insane? And I swear to God, I think we all did.
I've got some answers for that. It isn't that we all dated the same guy. We were walking around with a deeply inaccurate sense of ourselves by not understanding that we had ADHD.
It's like we were walking around with a neon sign that says, I'm probably the problem.
Maybe, but the pattern makes sense once you understand your ADHD brain.
It really ticks me off that there's so much research showing that women with ADHD have higher rates of unhealthy or abusive relationships.
Unfortunately, that is true. It's one of those more than accurate statistics that women who undiagnosed or diagnosed with ADHD do have higher rates of being in abusive relationships. We'd actually talked about it when we covered Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's important to understand these things happen to many of us, not because we are naive and not because we are stupid, and most definitely not because we love drama.
Although we do like a good dopamine hit. Sorry, I know. That's not helpful.
It's because we were navigating relationships with a brain we didn't understand and a story about ourselves that was very, very wrong.
And that's what pisses me off.
It pisses us all off. And when you grow up undiagnosed, you internalize a narrative. Lazy, too much, too sensitive, disorganized, dramatic. These descriptions get shoved down our throats at a very young age, a very developmental age, and it sticks.
You start to think that it's not just that you make mistakes, but that you are the mistake.
When that's your baseline, if someone treats you poorly, you don't immediately think, this is unacceptable. You think, what did I do? Or what can I do to fix it?
I used to apologize for things that I didn't even really understand. It's like, I'm sorry for whatever I did. Because at the time, it like felt completely logical. Because I was always forgetting something, misplacing things, missing something. Obviously, it had to be something that I had done.
We've talked that ADHD working memory can be translated into sort of a moral failure, but it really ends up showing up in that harsh self-critique that we put upon ourselves.
When someone says you're remembering wrong, you think, yeah, I probably am.
And that's where things can become dangerous.
And this makes me furious too. I'm just pissed off this week.
It's okay to be pissed off. It's okay to get angry about these things, especially because if we get angry about this, we look at ourselves, we see what we went through, and then we definitely don't want our daughters, our nieces, any women that we know going through these things. And it's so easy to end up in these weird loops and end up around people who are predatory. They come for us on purpose. We self-blame, but they see us from across the room. we see them in a much different light than what they're seeing us. And it's not a case that we are weak. They are not seeing someone who is weak. They're seeing someone who is caring and loving and wants to think the best of others. When we start talking gaslighting, gaslighting works by making someone question their reality. Um, Gaslighting is one of those buzzwords. Oh, it's overused, gaslighting. It didn't even exist until a few years ago, blah, blah, blah. I won't say that the term flows off my tongue, but the description of it is accurate.
Fun fact, it comes from a movie called Gaslighting. I think it was called Gaslighting or Gaslit or something. Yeah, it's about a man. It's like back in the 50s or something. I will have to look it up. It's a man who tries to make his wife think she's crazy by playing with the lights. Like he dims the lights and
Oh, I think I
does
remember
certain
you telling
things.
me about this.
Yeah, and she's always like, "Someone dim the lights." He's like, "Yeah, no, it's not." Yeah. Um, if you're already questioning your reality, you don't need much nudging.
We know that ADHD impacts our memory, our sequencing or recall. If we're looking back and remembering that we did not have a diagnosis at the time, we can see where we doubt ourselves continuously about whether or not we are remembering things correctly and how easy it is for us to assume that we are the ones in the wrong. And I'm not saying that we don't occasionally forget dates or things like this. This is when we're talking excessiveness in a relationship. It's so easy when someone says that never happened for that hesitation to pull up in your mind.
Even when your gut's like screaming, you're right. You know you're remembering things correctly. You just have that underlying questioning. It was just you, and you were the one who was wrong.
A late diagnosed woman describing feeling like the unreliable narrator of their own lives is so common.
If you're with someone who exploits that, I mean, it's just devastating. An unhealthy relationship.
ADHD explains the vulnerability that you were feeling in that time. It's also a case that you're usually in a spot of learned behaviors that bring on very negative consequences. No matter a diagnosis or not, um, ADHD does explain that we have vulnerabilities and that we are open and kind to others. There is never, ever an excuse for any partner to behave in a way that is predatory upon you. And trying to mess with your head on purpose or being in a place where they choose to, they know they're openly lying and they're choosing to manipulate the situation. That's never, ever going to end well. And there's no excuse for that behavior.
Definitely. Never.
I have been in that position. I have given that excuse. I was still very um, young and unknowing of the consequences of having a relationship with someone like that. And it really is just devastating. Let's transition because I know that was a heavy topic. Let's talk about some rejection sensitivity dysphoria, RSD, which is intense, extreme emotional pain caused by perceived or actual rejection or criticism. This is often linked to ADHD.
So even thinking you're being criticized or rejected like becomes physically painful.
Both of us recording and many listening are familiar with RSD. For people who don't experience RSD, it sounds dramatic.
It's not dramatic. It's physiological. It's your nervous system just goes on full emergency mode.
You start scanning constantly. Are they mad? Did I say something wrong? Are they pulling away?
And you will twist yourself into a pretzel to stop feeling that way. I hate that. I know that feeling too well, and I hate it.
Yes, I do too. Um, when you start feeling like this, though, it means someone can control you by just withdrawing slightly.
I've been in that spiral, especially like, oh, try the silent treatment. Oh, you just frantically, you're trying to fix it. What did I do wrong? What do I have to say? You start apologizing for stuff that you don't even know what you're apologizing for. It's just anything to make that pain go away and for you to feel like everything's, I guess, normal, but you're just, what am I trying to say? You just want to go back to that moment before you thought that they were rejecting you or about to leave you or abandon you.
Intellectually, you may feel like you're overreacting, um, but your body doesn't care. And in that moment, it's just listening to that intense mode that you're feeling.
You're just wanting to get yourself out of that situation. And it is, it's a physical response. And I think that's really hard for people to understand.
I do too. I think it's very much a fawn response for many of us, because we're trying to smooth things over, we keep things calm, and we're pulling in a lot of self blame while we do it. ADHD brains, they crave novelty and intensity,
I think about like what's more intense, the beginning of a new relationship.
especially the fast consuming, we've known each other 2 weeks, but this feels cosmic kind, which I fucking love. I'm here to say
Cannot. Sparks are flying, big declarations. There's emotional fireworks.
dopamine's on tap. You're love bombing the crap out of the person, but sometimes you don't realize that your love bombing and their love bombing are a little bit different.
But it's all like so exciting though. But while you're feeling just electrified, feeling, how did you get so lucky to find this person? You miss all those red flags.
Because of all the red hearts flying around, they just get mixed up. You see them and they don't register as deal breakers, because the intensity feels so good. And really, when we're in these types of things, when we are love bombing and the person across from us is repeating that behavior, but in a negative way, because ADHDs do it for love and for wanting to be with someone because we are over the moon and we are so happy. Someone who might
Exactly.
not have our best interest at heart does it for other reasons. And in that moment, we're falling in love with ourselves, not them, because they're reflecting it back to us. They just become a mirror and they're reflecting all these things back. And so the things that aren't quite like us, we just sort of overlook because it feels so good to be loved. Love feels good, right? It all feels so fucking good.
It's awesome.
Right. And I think this is also what draws in later when we talk about feeling so ashamed because hindsight is 2020. And typically in these relationships, we get down the road and we see how bad they are, whether or not we realize what's going on with us, our emotional skills and how we're, being in this relationship. We still just get wrapped up in this shame because we see the red flags and we think, but when it's good, it's so good. That's a line that so many of us use. Oh, but when it's good, it's just so good. No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah. But we know that those toxic dynamics, they tend to follow a pattern. There's the intensity, the conflict, the withdrawal, reconciliation. Think of all that's going on with that, right? All that dopamine that's flowing on.
Everything is firing in so many good ways. And you're falling in love with yourself. So you truly feel loved because I'm here to tell you, people with ADHD, we are amazing people to be loved by. So when it's being mirrored back to us, that's amazing. And in these lulls and things with these patterns, we get the intermittent reinforcement. It's the same mechanism as gambling. When it's good, it's so good. Well, you got a 50-50 chance. And so when it's good, your brain's lighting up again after being starved of attention or love or self-esteem. Then suddenly they come back and they give it back to you because they're controlling the flow. It's not on tap anymore. It's restricted. It's California rules for watering grass. Only on Tuesdays after 5 for 15 minutes based on how low you're feeling.
Yeah. Exactly like gambling. You just keep pulling that lever, waiting for that good version of them to come back.
Someone else across the room in a relationship, you might see they look calm or they feel secure and it's not as intense as what you're feeling. And so it's very different.
I think the thing is for the unregulated ADHD nervous system, that looks boring, right?
It does.
We like the kind of the push and the pull and the something new is happening. The idea of it just being this like stable day after day, frankly, just sounds really boring. Even though maybe that might be healthier, which is hard to come to terms with.
Agreed. I would think that we were addicted to the passion, but I don't think that's the case. I think a lot of times we're addicted to the activation, the moment in which we grab onto and gravitate to um, that dopamine and that feeling of being accepted and loved, and why it can be so intense. A lot of us weren't addicted to passion. We were addicted to activation.
I used to definitely confuse that anxiety, especially around a newer relationship. It kind of felt like that, the chemistry, right? Realizing that's not maybe how it's always, that anxiety, that nervousness, um, shouldn't be there all the time. And that was kind of a humbling realization when I thought about that looking back, because who wouldn't want the crazy fireworks and the red hot passion? But it is a tough habit to break, to really make sure, like, what are we looking for in this relationship? Is it developing the right way, or are we just enjoying the dopamine hits going along with it?
Anxiety versus chemistry is a really interesting idea because that is something that we get very confused. We are in a pretty continuous heightened state a lot of times of anxiety, especially when we're undiagnosed and not recognizing that. I can see that getting mixed up. And it's funny because I'm thinking about it right now, like the idea of those butterflies in the stomach versus that I'm going to puke,
I was just about to say, yeah. Aren't you supposed to have butterflies? Isn't that a good sign? They give
right?
you butterflies? That's a good sign.
Yeah.
Must mean you're meant to be. No.
That would be an interesting aisle to go down. We're talking patterns, and another we can kind of fall into is the I'm a mess, my life's a mess, but they're so put together. That is a lie that we will tell ourselves
Yeah.
over and over again.
If you struggle with those adulting things, the paperwork, money, planning, logistics, but someone comes along and they just look like they can balance you out. It feels very reassuring. Or maybe you think you can learn something from them. I don't know. Or opposites attract. There's something about seeing that dependability, or what you perceive as dependability. Um, it's just kind of less chaos. I don't know.
This dynamic of they're organized and I'm so disheveled. We also sort of mix this up with feeling safe. One
Mhm.
of the things I love most about falling in love is that feeling of safety you have in the beginning, not seeing those red flags because we feel unsafe all the time, which would make sense. We talk about being in fight or flight constantly and heightened nervous systems. It takes a lot. It's nice to feel like you're safe with someone, like they would protect you from the whole world. That's one of those feelings that it feels so good that we miss out, right? We miss out on the red flags. We pull in the self deprecation to show that we aren't doing enough for this person who is so organized and so well balanced. We're the ones falling short when that's not the case, because it might have been a possibility that, yeah, maybe we paid a few bills late. Maybe we didn't get the dishes done, stuff like that. It's not our strong suit, but it's not like we couldn't functionally take care of ourselves. And I think that is one of those things when we start to slide into relationships with people like we're talking about, we start to feel like, oh, well, I can't do these things when you could do these things before you met the person. It just wasn't at the level that was like what you're making this other person out to be.
It's always at the last minute, but it got done.
It got done. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's one thing to even each other out because I do the dishes and you do the drying and you pay the bills and I take the kids to school. That's a division of duties. We may have already come into the relationship believing that we were incompetent, and now we feel so less than.
And yeah, until it becomes you can't function without me.
And if you already believe you're incompetent,
That you believe them.
and that's not a partnership, that's control.
Exactly.
Women with ADHD are master maskers. Kind of sounds like Master Blaster from, do you remember that cartoon? Kid video? Master maskers.
Like a lot of women, when I first started dating someone, I always had this like entire personality built around the fact that I'm like low maintenance, easygoing. I'm fun. I'm not demanding. I don't need much.
I had the low maintenance persona as well because I'm not going to be too much. I'm already worried about being too much. So I overcorrected. I'm low maintenance. I love that one.
Then you become hyper attuned to everyone else's needs, right? You can read a room instantly and you can adjust in seconds. So you can make sure everybody's happy and you're just the happy, easygoing, low maintenance kind of chick.
This makes you very adaptable. What makes you low maintenance is because a lot of times you're abandoning your own self to take care of the other person in the relationship. You are low maintenance because you aren't doing the things that you need to do to keep yourself regulated, but you are running yourself ragged and belittling yourself in comparison to your partner.
It's just you become so disconnected from yourself. Um, you don't want to ask for what you need or what you want because then you're demanding. You really do become disconnected from what your needs are, and it becomes all about them and making sure that their needs are met and that they're happy.
And so we're sitting in a position where we are low maintenance and we are easygoing. We are also exhausted from just functioning, and our boundaries are typically the first thing to go.
You keep the peace. You don't push back because at that point you just don't have the energy to defend yourself or to stand up for yourself or to, express your needs or your boundaries.
Eventually, you're going to reach that point where you can't maintain the masking. And what do you do?
That's when they start telling you, "Oh, you've changed. You're not who I thought you were."
That one does kill me. You see people online and they're bitching and going on about how you've changed. You're just not the same. Well, fuck no, I'm not the same. I got to be that fun, carefree person and I got to let my hair blow around in the wind and you thought my opinions were amazing and everything was great. And then you keep going on living your life and I raise our kids and I take care of our house and I pay our bills. But even if I don't pay them well enough for your opinion, I'm still paying them and you're still out there doing your thing. But so many times in that situation, that's, I feel like, where we feel more dismissed because we
Mhm.
had this person, we had this level of safety. We thought we were safe with them. That's why we pushed so hard. That's why we ran our batteries out. And then suddenly we've changed. You're no longer performing for me. You're no longer working within what I consider to be my comfort zone, my wheelhouse.
You didn't change. You just couldn't do it anymore. You stopped masking. But they saw you as the low maintenance, doesn't have any needs, doesn't have any boundaries. When you start expressing those, or the mask starts to slip and um, not so easygoing, low maintenance chick suddenly becomes somebody who's has needs and wants, or, maybe isn't as quote unquote put together as she wanted you to think she was. I remember my ex, some argument where he was screaming at me again that he thought he'd been sold a bill of goods. He thought I pulled the wool over his eyes. I was like, yeah, that's right. That's what I did. How did you know?
That was the plan all along.
There's a part of me like, you're right. I wasn't, but they're just not open to the change and you can't explain, right? I understand why you think that way because I didn't speak up, right? I didn't ask for what I wanted. But I have a right to do that.
Yes.
Why is that so hard for them to understand? I can see where it's a change, but if you're in a partnership, shouldn't they be like, okay, and then like, well, why haven't you been asking for what you needed?
I can see where it's a change. What I don't understand is so often it's like, well, you've changed. And it's like, yes, I have, because this is maybe my tipping point. I've reached my tipping point. You've reached your tipping point multiple times. I was there to pick you up. I was there to set you right. And I did this for a very, very long time. And I'm going to get deep on this one. Um, because, it is kind of how I feel about it. It's like, I cannot speak on behalf of the undiagnosed male ADHD, right? I cannot speak on behalf of men who experience ADHD because from what we understand, men and women's experiences are very, very different, right? But I can speak on how the actions of men with ADHD have affected my life, you know? Um, and so I think this is one of those things that it's kind of impactful and it creates a shift, right? I think this happens a lot of times after women get their ADHD diagnosis because they hit a tipping point, they get their ADHD diagnosis, and they go from being in a relationship where it's like, "Why are you being a bitch?" to being in a relationship like, "Well, you're a bitch and you have an ADHD diagnosis," right? And
Mhm.
they're not looking past that. They're not looking as to why those behaviors are coming into play, why we are being affected like that, right? And I'm not saying that we are perfect by any means. You know what I mean? I'm not saying if I fly off the handle, it doesn't mean that I don't own a portion of that. But I do know that it makes it so hard because it makes us like we don't recognize, oh, well, the reason why I'm at this point in my life is because I've set myself on fire for everyone else, including my significant other. And I've done this until I can no longer do it. And now I need help. Now I need to be picked up. No, I cannot do these things. I cannot functionally do these things. I've reached a true point of burnout. And that's when sometimes they move on to someone else or they just don't forgive us for all these things that we are experiencing. We get no bandwidth. We get nothing from that. And I that's what makes me so sad and so angry about those situations because we do reach a point where we are no longer the person we were, but there's a reason for it. There's a truly honest to God, deep guttural reason.
Yeah.
And we expect the people that we love to come and rescue us. And I think there's also a point that many of us with ADHD reach where we decide that no one's coming to save us, just in our own minds. Do you remember when you reached that point when you were drowning and you were like, no one's coming to save me? No, this is it. It's
Yeah.
just me. That, I think, in and of itself is something that's so terrifying that women with ADHD experience that click, that moment, that difference. But it typically ripples throughout all of our relationships. And when that comes, it's typically because there is a relationship or something going on in our lives that is so intense and so not okay
Yeah.
that we realize we're all alone. And that's where if we built community early, if we had close friends early, if we had those people that we trusted to talk about with when we were in these relationships or to do these things, maybe it could make a difference. Maybe we can find each other and strengthen each other to know and build off of it. And maybe we would have relationships where we did get a chance to get in front of it and we did get to explain why we didn't like something they were doing or how we could explain emotionally and properly and transfer that to our partner. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. And that's why we all end up dating quotations the same guy.
Because they are emotionally unavailable and you've built a relationship that's all about them. You're there
Hmm.
for them. They don't need to be there for you because you're so low maintenance. You don't need
Hmm.
much. They're the ones who, yeah, talk about their day and talk about what's going on in their lives. They don't need to ask you about yours or be involved or worry about it because you're just obviously just happy, just being there. You don't need anything. That's why you're so low maintenance. And but then when you show up like, hey, actually, there are some things I need. There are some things I need to change. Then suddenly you're like, oh, wait, instead of being curious, like you would think a good partner would be, or want to meet your needs, it is suddenly, you've changed. How dare you? How dare you have boundaries? How dare you have needs? You've never had them before. I don't know why I never noticed. Most people do. Yeah. Why didn't he ever notice? Like, geez, doesn't she ever need anything? No, she's just a cool chick. She didn't need much. She'll do everything. Yeah. I just get to, yeah, be taken care of.
For getting heavy. But we can't just, we're not just going to leave you sitting here.
I think this got a lot heavier than we thought it was going to be, Jess. What do you think? I think we've gotten pretty heavy. I don't think we can leave people here.
Right? I agree. We
Although I
can't
did
leave
say I
people
was
here.
angry about everything. So, but maybe we can like
Right?
give us,
And
yeah.
it's okay for us to get intense, because it's something we both feel strongly about. And, keep in mind, this doesn't mean that every single person who you are with is like this. That is not the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Learning to realize the difference between anxiety and intuition, the difference between uh, rationalizing and making excuses.
Yeah.
That's
No.
what we're looking for. Those interruptions of thought that allow us to see and speak clearly about the relationships we've been in, the ones we were in, and what we want for our future relationships.
That is a great point because not every person you're going to be in a relationship is like this by any means. Some find really good people. But it is just so many women who were late diagnosed with ADHD have such similar stories about relationships that they have been in, and that pattern is always the same. And maybe they've only had one relationship like that. Maybe they're currently in that relationship. Maybe every relationship's been like that. ADHD made us vulnerable, but we need to understand that it didn't make us responsible for someone else's behavior. Those are the part of the patterns that we want to change.
When we see the pattern, we can interrupt it. And not just the pattern in ourselves, but us talking with the people we love and us talking and seeing and experiencing other women's perspectives. These things can just be seen. I don't know how else to put it.
You can start to notice when you're chasing intensity. When are you abandoning yourself just because you want to avoid that rejection? You're not asking for anything. You're putting your needs aside. Um, and when are you just assuming you're wrong by default?
Whether you realize it or not, you can truly build a tolerance for discomfort um, instead of scrambling to fix it. You just sort of lean in, but in so many self-impacting ways.
You can learn that difference between anxiety and compatibility, even though it's so fucking hard. But it is needed. But damn, it's hard.
We always start out by saying this is not therapy or medical advice, but we will share that therapy can help, especially ADHD informed therapist. We cannot suggest enough with going to therapy, finding someone who understands female ADHD, as well
Yeah.
as ADHD coaching. These are things that are highly impactful when it comes to
Having someone help you start to understand those patterns, start to recognize them. But I cannot agree more with you, Jess. You've got to have someone who definitely understands ADHD. Sadly, really just being angry at myself for the relationships that I stayed in are the ones that I pursued when I really should have just run in the opposite direction.
I think there's plenty of us that can agree with that, you know.
I was operating with incomplete information, an overwhelmed nervous system. But that version of me, I now understand, deserves understanding, not to be blamed or criticized. It's that self-compassion piece.
Being non-contemptuous toward yourself, recognizing that that version of you had been shamed and belittled and dismissed way before you started having your relationships.
But gosh darn it, sometimes I wish there was a frickin' time machine and I could just like go back and erase some of it or get that time back. Just get some time back. How about that?
It's one of those things that initially does make us also angry when we first get that ADHD diagnosis because we do a full-on self-audit. We do a full self-audit of everything. We look at every little thing we just pick apart. And we know there's no going back, and that pisses us off. And we see all the things that other people should have seen, no matter what year it was. Like, how the fuck
Mhm.
did somebody not know? Or why were they so fucking mean to me? Or why was I treated like this? They knew this was shitty. They knew this wasn't right. Kids, parents, family, teachers, you name it. And it's so hard to, you have to give everybody else grace for this, but really, you have to give yourself grace because until you do, you don't heal. They talk about forgiveness, forgiving everybody in your life, but you have to forgive yourself for not understanding and for not knowing.
But I'm still going to be pissed at a lot of those professionals that should have known, but didn't help us, even though we were reaching out for help. And that is, I think, too, when we talk about like the anger and the grief of angry at that system that didn't help you when they should have known better. And those lost years. And that is hard. And I think too, depending if you're a lot older when you get your diagnosis, it makes you feel like there's just so many more years that you lost. Like at least if you found out in your 20s, you had a chance, you could turn it around. But um, it is part of that anger and the grief that goes along with the diagnosis that you have to work through. And it's been 5 years for me. I'm still working through it. Maybe it'll be just a lifetime, process. Like grief, actually grief it's never um, single straight line. It ebbs and flows.
It does. It definitely does. I do think it gets better, and I do think doing the work is worth it. I think it's worth digging down and finding yourself. If this episode resonated for you, then you're not alone.
We've yet to meet a late diagnosed woman who doesn't recognize at least part of this pattern.
ADHD doesn't doom you to bad relationships.
It just means that you need relationships that are built around your real brain, not the masked version.
And ideally, someone who doesn't weaponize your vulnerabilities.
Which actually is a low bar. That's a bare minimum.
Share this with someone who needs it.
You're not alone. You're worthy of love. And you're not the only one who's angry on the inside.